You know those books? We all have them. The ones from our childhood that are all dog-eared and worn out. The illustrations are so familiar they're basically family photos, right? Well, we think we know these stories inside and out. But as we're about to see, the tales we tell our children are never, ever as simple as they seem.
Just take a look at this. Peter Rabbit, right? Squeezing under that gate. For so many of us, images like this are basically the wallpaper of our childhood. They bring back this feeling of a warm, safe, maybe a little bit mischievous world. A cozy escape where, let's be honest, the biggest threat is a grumpy old gardener.
Simple, innocent, timeless. Yeah, that's the brand, isn't it? We remember these books as being about pure, uncomplicated lessons, all wrapped up in a nice little package with talking animals and fairy godmothers. And really, that's kind of how we like to think about childhood itself.
But what if that whole idea, the very concept of an innocent childhood that needs to be protected, is actually a much, much newer and way more complicated invention than we realize? Now, this might sound a little strange, but for most of human history, this idea of childhood being a separate, protected, innocent phase of life, it just didn't exist. You see, before we could even have children's literature, we first had to invent the idea of the modern child. And you can see that invention happen right here. For centuries, most kids were what you'd call working children. They were, part of the economy, like little adults, doing physical labor with a lot of independence. But then, over the 19th and early 20th centuries, this completely new idea pops up, the sacred child. A child who is precious, fragile, something to be admired, and, most importantly, protected from the real world.
And this whole idea really got its juice from the culture of the time. You had romantic poets like William Wordsworth here, who started to idealize childhood. They saw its purity as this beautiful, perfect contrast to the dirty, noisy world of the Industrial Revolution. The child's world was this natural heaven, fighting back against the machine.
So, it's a really beautiful idea, but it forces us to ask a pretty important question. Who actually got to be a sacred child? Whose innocence was really being protected here? And this is where the picture gets complicated. This is a famous scene from Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was one of the most powerful books of the 19th century. And it shows you, clear as day, that this new concept of childhood innocence definitely wasn't applied to everyone equally. This quote really just says it all. You have little Eva, the white child, who is basically the poster child for that sacred, angelic innocence we were just talking about. But that very same innocence, that protected status, it was completely and totally denied to the enslaved African-American children in the very same story. So the key takeaway is that this ideal childhood was, from its very beginning, often a concept tied up in privilege and race. Okay, so we know the idea of the child itself was changing. So what about the stories written for them? Well, let's just say early children's literature wasn't really about having fun. These books had a job to do. They had a mission. And the key word here is didactic. It's a fancy word, but it just means that a story is built specifically to teach a lesson. A moral one, a practical one, whatever. And believe me, the early writers for children were not subtle about their lessons. Let's take a classic example, a story called The Purple Jar. So a little girl named Rosamond sees this beautiful purple jar and she has to have it. Her mother says, okay, you can have the pretty jar you want, or you can have the new shoes you need. Of course, she picks the jar. But, and here's the twist, she gets it home and realizes the purple color was just from the water inside. The jar itself is just plain glass. And for the next month, she has to suffer with her leaky, worn-out shoes. No magic, no easy fix. The lesson is learned through cold, hard consequences. And this all leads to a huge tension at the very heart of children's literature. Are these books supposed to be a magical escape from the real world? Or are they supposed to be a tool for kids to start making sense of it? Warts and all. This slide just captures that whole spectrum perfectly. On one side, you have the pure, wonderful fantasy of Tar Beach, where a little girl can literally fly over the city. It's a beautiful escape. And then on the other side, you have Harriet the Spy, a book that was a total game changer for realism. It's about a girl who isn't always nice, who spies on adults and sees their messy, complicated lives. This push towards realism just exploded in the 1960s with what became known as the problem novel. All of a sudden, books for young readers were tackling these incredibly tough issues, gang violence in The Outsiders, or even social corruption in The Chocolate War. That protected little world of the sacred child was being blown wide open. And that whole debate about what's appropriate for kids to read, it's more intense today than ever. If you look at this list of books that are frequently challenged or banned, you'll see they're the ones carrying on that tradition of realism. They're grappling with race, identity, sexuality, violence, all of it. It just proves that this question of what kind of reality we show our kids is still a major cultural battlefield.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? Why do these stories, everything from Peter Rabbit all the way to The Hate U Give, have such a powerful grip on us? Well, it really comes down to two big things that they do.
And here it is. This is the whole ball game. These books, they're a mirror. They reflect our society right back at us. Our beliefs, our fears, our values. But at the same time, they're also a map. They are a set of instructions we're giving to the next generation about the kind of world we hope they'll build.
This last comparison really shows that evolution in action. Just look at the worlds being shown in Babar versus Esperanza Rising. You see this massive shift in who gets to be the hero, what kind of life is considered important, and what kinds of challenges are even worth writing about. The mirror is reflecting a changing world, and the map is pointing to a totally different future.
So, in the end, we have to face it. The stories we pick out for our kids are some of the most important cultural decisions we make. They are not just entertainment. They are literally the blueprints for the future. And that leaves us with one last, really big question to think about. What kind of world are the stories of today building for tomorrow?